Unit 6, Absolutism versus Constitutionalism. The Rise of French Absolutism, 1598 to 1661. Part 2. The French crisis lasted from 1610 until 1624. The new king, Louis VIII, was only 9 when his father was assassinated. Henry's widow and second wife, Marie de' Medici, was the regent during Louis's minority. She immediately canceled Henry's war against Spain and soon reversed his policy altogether by contracting a marriage alliance between young Louis and the daughter of the Spanish king. During her regency, the high French nobility grabbed control at the provincial level and bullied her into squandering Sully's treasury among them. She was pressed into calling the Estates General in 1614, but when the three estates convened, hostility between the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie hostility was so paralyzing, they could accomplish nothing. Evidently, a parliament was no longer needed in France. The Estates General did not meet again until 1789. By the early 1620s, religious warfare was beginning again in southern France. The Huguenot towns of Languedoc were in open revolt against the crown. Louis VIII urgently needed a strong new minister if any part of his father's legacy was to be salvaged. Cardinal Richelieu became Louis VIII's chief minister in 1624 and directed the French government until his death. Early on, Richelieu entered the clergy, but soon began working in state service during the regency of Marie de' Medici. Marie, hoping to regain control, working through Richelieu, persuaded the Pope to make him a cardinal, and the king put him onto the royal council. As soon as this occurs, Richelieu turns on Marie, driving her and Louis VIII's younger brother into exile. 5 dukes and 4 counts were executed on treason charges for challenging the power of the king. He lived by the philosophy of raison d'etat. Any workable expedient was justifiable as long as it aided the Bourbon monarchy. Richelieu's first task was to prevent the Huguenot rebellion from expanding into a full-scale religious war. Fortunately for him, the Huguenots of this day were considerably less threatening and less ably led. By 1629, the French army put down the rebellions in Languedoc. Richelieu's Edict of Arras in 1629 amended the Edict of Nantes by depriving the Huguenots of all their political and military privileges, while continuing their religious liberty. As far as the power of the nobility, he constantly worked to end regional rule. He set out intendants, agents of the royal council, into provinces to oversee royal decrees and local tax collection, effectively creating a strong centralized bureaucracy. He managed to double the royal revenue, mainly by raising the taille and squeezing the peasants further. The most spectacular aspect of Richelieu's administration was his foreign policy. Once he had reestablished domestic order, he picked up where Henry IV had left off and entered war against the Habsburgs. France's participation in the 30 Years' War made them the preeminent power in European foreign policy. After Richelieu's death in 1642, France again plunged into a period of domestic turmoil, but soon recovered. Louis VIII died shortly after Richelieu, leaving 5-year-old Louis IX and his widow, Anne of Austria, as regent. The regency was instantly unpopular, for Anne was a Habsburg princess, and she entrusted her affairs to her lover, a smooth Italian adventurer named Giulio Mazarini, known as Mazarin in France. Mazarin was a matchless opportunist. Starting as a papal diplomat, no clergy member, he worked his way to Richelieu's graces and married his daughters into the French high nobility. Even though he was hated, Cardinal Mazarin continued Richelieu's policies and was a great administrator. By an unhappy coincidence, however, the 1640s produced one of France's greatest agricultural depression and famines. Economic dislocation and political unrest ignited the nobility into the Fronde, a series of rebellions during Mazarin's rule. The nobles used the unhappiness with the taxes among the peasants as open warfare began throughout France. The power of the Frondes is eventually crushed when the nobles began to fight each other. The brutality of the Frondes was never forgotten by young Louis XIV, who grew to distrust the Parisian mobs and thus moving the French government to Versailles.